Welcome to Hybis Conversations. My name is Suresh Kochattal. Photography is a hobby for many, a passion for some, and a profession for many others. End of the day, photography is all about images. It's all about creating that magic. But professional photographers go beyond all this. For them, it's a love of that profession. Today we have with us Arvind Chenji, one of India's numero photographers, if you can call him that, to speak to us regarding this profession and how it's dealing in a changed world where digital is everything. Welcome to the show, Arvind.
Thank you, Suresh.
Okay, let me start your journey by capturing your early days. And the main thing that we would look at is you started, I remember somewhere along the way you told me that you started your photography pretty early, I think when you were in college.
School actually, high school.
Oh, high school, okay.
Yeah.
So how was it? I mean, why did you start and how did it all start?
It was just curiosity. See, my dad had gone to France on deputation for some course for 2 years. When he came back from there, he got a camera called the Yashica Minister D. And when he got this Yashica Minister D camera, it used to be lying in the cupboard, like any typical middle class house. There used to be a steel cupboard, and it used to be kept under lock and key. And the camera was also kept under lock and key. I was in my second or third class when that came in, and when I was in my 11th class is when I managed to pick the camera out from the cupboard without him knowing, and learned how to use that camera by myself, by asking people and stuff like that. So that's how it started. And apart from that, I used to somehow or the other, I used to somehow manage to wangle myself a little bit of pocket money with which I could buy a roll of film, and I could get it processed and printed into small 2B size. It was twice the size of a passport print, the pictures that I took. And then I used to flick some money from when you're sent out on errands to buy vegetables or provisions, something, 50 paise used to go into my pocket to fund my photography. That's how it was.
So you grew up basically learning photography from what your dad had started with. So it runs in the family?
No, not at all.
Okay.
My dad's incidents with the camera are hilarious. So I remember this very clearly. Mom used to have this small garden, and there was a rose bush in the garden which used to yield about 200 roses every morning. And she wanted dad to take some pictures, and he very grandly pulled the camera out and shot a lot of pictures and put it back in. Mom never saw the pictures, but finally she figured out that he had not loaded a roll of film. It was just to keep her happy that he did that. So no, nothing runs in the family. I learned photography by questioning things, by reading photography, by looking at all old magazines, looking at work which I liked, and which kind of inspired me. Then I'd look and see how I could do it better. So the 3 questions that I used to ask whenever I did these pictures. So would you like me to go through the 3 questions, Suresh, on this?
Yes, certainly. You can.
Okay, so the question number 1 was, when I liked the picture really very much. This I've repeated so many times earlier too, but when I liked the picture very much, I would like to see how the photographer who shot the picture. The second question I would ask was, why did he shoot the picture? Why did he or she shoot the picture the way they shot the picture? And the third question would be, how would I have shot the picture if I had been in that same place? So that kind of made me a little more aware and made me think a little of other possibilities, essentially other angles and all that. So that's how I think that actually I think was a foundation for my understanding and taking things in photography to another level.
So when you started in college, I remember you telling me this, that you started making your first pocket money by doing assignments while still in college, while many others would be more dependent on parents for the pocket money. You started making money by doing photography assignments. So how did that happen?
Yeah, I bought myself a second-hand enlarger also at that time, which was actually a homemade enlarger. There used to be a gentleman called Behram Mistry, whose grandfather had a studio. He had made a enlarger, and Behram was my coach, and he sold it to me, I think for 500 rupees or something like that, which is quite a lot of money for me those days. And I used to make prints out of it. And the first shoot that I did professionally, where I got paid 50 rupees, was for a girl's sari ceremony or something like that, which was very interesting. I don't think I liked the picture very much, but they were happy with it. So over a period of time, I used to be very passionate about it, and that's how I managed to get in there and do this.
So you also had a bike in which you had to fill in fuel, and so that needed some money also, isn't it? So
what happened was, subsequently Dad and Mom had gone to Algeria, and they couldn't take me there. So they said, okay, we'll give you, when I come back, we'll buy your bike. And when they came back, they said they'll buy me a TVS 50. I said, I'd rather ride my cycle than ride this TVS 50. If you buy the TVS 50, you're going to keep it at home only. I wanted a Bullet. So then as a compromise, we got a SD. But then for the SD, I had to pay, they were willing to fork out 5,000. The SD cost 10,360 rupees those days. I remember that very vividly. And I took a loan on my uncle's name, bought the bike on my uncle's name. So I had to pay back 250 rupees every month to the bank. And so photography used to fund that. But once you have a bike, you also need to put fuel into it, and you're going around, and all these expenses used to come in. So it became a kind of a money-making tool for me. So you would say I've been doing professional photography from the age of 16, 17 maybe.
I also remember you telling me that you used to rummage around Abbott's on Sundays trying to find those old photography books which you could buy at a kind of a discount, a heavy discount rather, at a steal almost, and then voraciously read through all that. And I think that you were a self-taught photographer, isn't it?
Yeah. So this whole thing is there was no material available for you to learn photography. There was a photographic society.
And we are talking of which year now?
1978,
I think many in this generation watching this might not even have been born then, but those who were born then would remember those days. Because I remember distinctly that Abbott's was a favorite destination to go and buy those second-hand books. But I never bought photography books. I always used to go and buy James Hadley Chase or any of those other books that were there, the fiction books. Please go on.
So I used to be so consumed by the passion of photography that I used to pick up these magazines which used to be available for 50 paise to 2 rupees depending on the condition of the magazine, photography magazines, which used to be Popular Photography and stuff like that, which used to come from America. And I would read the magazine cover to cover, including classified. You could ask me anything about the magazine, I'd know about it. I'd read about every photographer, what they've done in it, what's available, everything I know about it. And that kind of laid a foundation for my, I'd say, knowledge of photography. It's like it was like my course for me. So that's how I did it. But I guess that's
so. What was your first professional shoot, if you can call it that? And do you recollect what was that?
No, I do. The first professional shoot, I would say it was a professional shoot because I got paid for it, was that girls'
sari ceremony.
Yeah. Subsequently, I also did a dance, Arangetram, of a young girl who was doing a dance, and I really ruined the pictures, and I felt miserable about it. I felt, man, I'm never going to pick up a camera again, and stuff like that happened. But over a period of time, I figured out how I could improve the pictures also, because I was given wrong advice by somebody, the studio guy that I used to go and process and print with. He says, go ahead and do it, this is what will happen and stuff like that. But then it never happened really like that. So over a period of time I learned also that you need to figure things out for yourself and not rest on somebody else's advice all the while. So it's all a hit and trial all the while for us.
Arvind, another thing that you often tell me is the fact that you transcended beyond being just a Hyderabad photographer. And of course, early days in Hyderabad, you would have depended more on the advertising agencies for business. So how did it all work out? I mean, you used to go to agencies and tell them that you could take photography, because that would be very tough in those days in the 70s, 80s, to go to agencies and explain to them what is photography all about.
Actually, yes, I did exactly that. I used to do the rounds of the agencies. I used to go and meet everybody. When I opened my studio, I opened it in 85 in Panjagutta. It was actually a hole in the wall opposite the big mosque on the first floor. And I used to keep one of the boys who's now a photographer with a publication sitting over there, and I would go out and I would not come back till I'd got some work or I'd got the lead for a job or something like that, because I had to pay rent and salary and my fuel bills and all those things. That was critical for me. So I used to do the rounds, and when I started, I didn't really look at advertising agencies for work. I didn't think I was capable of doing it. I didn't know much about advertising, but when I found out what they were doing, then I started meeting smaller agencies, and then they figured out that they could use me for some work. And then Hyderabad was also growing at that time, so I kind of worked with practically everybody who was there and who had a business. So like Apollo Hospital or Idea Telephones or anybody in the market used to be a client, and I used to do a lot of work for all these people, so the campaigns and all.
So Arvind, photography as a passion is perfect, no issues on that. But when you got to make a living out of it, that becomes a tough game. And you would have realized over the years, I think, that it does pay, but it does pay in certain places. So can you let us know, I mean, let the viewers of HiBiz know how does it all work out? I mean, how does it feed you at the end of the day?
So let's look at it this way. When I started, almost all the photography that used to exist was either wedding photography and event photography or passport photography in the studios. I went to do a wedding shoot in Sikandra. I did a lot of weddings those days, but then one particular day I went over there and I felt I didn't want to do any more weddings because somebody called me a photo wale idhar aao or something like that. And that day I stopped doing weddings. I had to find an alternate for it, and so I started doing the rounds of all the ad agencies. I used to go into companies also and say, listen, if you need any photography to be done, I'll do it. And those days we were like general practitioners. In medicine, we were like GP guys, you know. So I would do industry, I would do product, I would do people, I would do wedding. I stopped doing wedding, but I do anything. And as I kept doing these things, I kept learning more and more about those things, and I eventually, I think, honed my skill to the level of understanding what a good picture is and what a bad picture is, how to differentiate between the two, which I think is probably the most critical thing in photography. Not many people know about it even today.
So you have been in that generation which witnessed a very major shift from rolls and films and processing into a digital age. Eastman Kodak didn't see it coming; they died as a company. But I think Arvind Chandji did see that happening, and even the equipment would have become far more sophisticated, far more expensive.
Yeah.
As such.
Actually, you'll be surprised to know, but Kodak was a company which invented the digital camera. The whole technology was invented by Kodak, and Kodak unfortunately collapsed because Kodak became too huge. It was like a mammoth. So by the time it could react to a situation, it was too late, I feel, for whatever was happening. But nonetheless, Kodak, leaving Kodak alone. But what happened over a period of time is that when digital came in, the first time digital came in, I was always clued in onto any new technology which is coming in. It used to be a natural curiosity in me to go find out more about it. And I found somebody who would set up a lab where they were converting a computer file, and transferring it onto a film. So the system was called F2FR, film to file recorder. And so each file to be transferred took about 5 to 10 minutes. So I spent the whole night to do a slide presentation for a client, and next morning I processed the film and sent it across. The clients loved it, but I realized that at that point I thought digital will never ever catch up with film technology. So I ignored it after that because there was no way in which the quality that I got at that time would have matched to film. That was a mistake because I ignored it at that point of time. It took me a long time to get back into digital technology. But once I I bought a low-end digital camera at one time, and then after that, all my other film cameras have gone into the shelf, and I've not used them since that time. There's nothing like digital. To tell you the truth, even before when you were getting the cameras, and a lot of youngsters won't understand this, but those days there were no cameras available off the shelf. You could not buy a good professional camera off the shelf. So we used to go every Sunday morning, we'd go and hang around near Lakdiga Pul Ganga Jamna Hotel, where the newspaper sellers used to come with bundles of newspaper, buy the first Deccan Chronicle out there, open it up, go sit down in Ganga Jamna, check out all the classified ads and see who had cameras for sale, and call them up before 6 in the morning and land up there and try to strike a deal and pick up a camera from there. So that's how it used to be.
Arvind, when you started, you also did industrial photography, you did fashion photography, and I remember those days in Times of India, you used to come and do shoots for Femina.
Yeah.
So if I ask you, it's like asking a mom with 3 children, who is the best child in this? But let me ask you this very, very honest question. Do you remember one assignment that you did in your professional career that you would say was top class, you would remember it all your life?
However important the picture might be, the picture is a product of my knowledge of lighting, camera, equipment, etc. But for me, the more important thing was the journey to take the picture, which used to connect me with people. So I'd done these shoots for National Geographic at that time, prior to which I used to assist the photographers in National Geographic. So they gave me a small shoot, and they said, you please shoot India and come back. For them it's a small shoot, for me it was a very big shoot. So I went around India by road, by flight, wherever it is, and I shot pictures of, the topic was Exotic India. This is to publicize the National Geographic TV and wherever their footprint was in the world. So they had hired about 80 photographers across the world to do it. India was being done by me at that point of time. All the pictures and all the people that I met over there really left a lasting impact on me. I met people in I met a truck driver in the Ran of Kutch in Gujarat, and he became a friend. He used to call me regularly. Then I met a truck driver, a taxi driver in Kerala who used to call me regularly. So these people are still in touch with me on and off. So this is India. I came to know, love, and enjoy interacting with people. So you learn so much more over there. That's what gives me pleasure.
So if you ask you to choose between fashion, tourism, and as you said, shooting for something like National Geographic, nature, what is your favorite pick?
Look,
That's a tough question again. It's like same question as I repeated.
so when I do fashion, a lot of people get very intrigued by the fact that I do a lot of fashion, because you get to meet a lot of pretty girls and very interesting looking models and actors and all that stuff, which is all very fine. But the thing is, we're shooting out there, and a model is the same as any other person next door. They will smell just as good or just as bad as the next person. So there's nothing special over there. For me, it is all a mind game. So when I get in behind the camera, I need to get into the mind of my subject, and I play around with it, whether they like it, whether they know it or don't know about it. I am there in their head, and I will be gently prodding them into my picture, what I want over there. So it's not so much technical. The technicalities are at your fingertip only, but what is important is the fact that I've got their mind under my grip at that point of time. I need to get that in, and only then I can do something really good. So whether it's fashion or whatever it is, if you talk about food, I shoot a lot of food also. And so when I do a food picture, there's a job that the food has to do. The picture has to stand up and sell food over there. So if I shoot a picture of a film star, it has to stand up and say, this film star looks so drop dead gorgeous that people will say, who's he or who's she? That's the kind of job that the picture has to do. So when I do my pictures, this is what has to happen. So I work towards it that way.
So Arvind, just like professionals in any other career who started pretty early, like you in the 70s, you would have trained a lot of youngsters into this profession. And after some time, you would have seen that they have gone ahead and set up their own shops. And in like any other profession, then starts the undercutting. People start doing jobs for less. And then, the entire profession gets kind of decimated after some time. It loses the credibility. It happens in every other profession. Did this also happen with you in photography?
It did happen with me in photography. Not that the people who worked with me went out and undercut me. I'm always very happy to lend a helping hand to the people who worked with me or anybody who's good. I've made it a habit that when I see a good picture anywhere, in any media, I try to track down the photographer and compliment him or her on that particular picture. But undercutting is a terrible malaise in the world of business, and it never helps anybody to really achieve anything much. So there was this time when somebody came and told me, an advertising agency person told me that there are two boys out here who were saying they'll do the same lighting as Arvind Chenji for half the price. I don't know what lighting I'm going to do for my next picture. So how are they going to know what my lighting is going to be? So that's when I realized it's just that I'm too accessible for all these people. They think they can take pot shots at me in various angles. So I doubled my fees from that moment onwards. That's how I managed to get away with it.
Arvind, it's not just that you did photography. You also taught photography, maybe not in a formal college or an institution, but you went to a channel like Zee and Kannada and Telugu, if I'm right, and you taught photography and also about vehicles, which is something that you love, the bikes and the cars. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
Sure, Suresh. So what happens is that yes, I have taught in a structured environment also. I've done workshops also. I was a guest faculty in OU Department of Journalism for some time at the beginning. And Zee Telugu contracted me to do a car and bike show, and I was doing that. Then they said that they're going to put me in front of the camera, and they made me do a show on photography. It was called Photo Show by Arvind Chenji, which was very popular, which became very popular amongst the entire state of Andhra Pradesh, United Andhra Pradesh those days. And subsequently, we spread that into Kannada also. So we took both the shows, the car and bike show and the photo show by Arvind Chenji, into Kannada also.
So how did you manage Kannada? Because I'm very, very inquisitive about it, because I also stayed in Bangalore for some time. I'm talking about the early 90s, but it's a tough language to learn, isn't it?
Actually, I don't know how it happened, but my father used to speak Kannada, and I guess that was in my ear for some time. So my cameraman and my makeup artist used to be Kannada speaking people. So I used to ask them, I said, listen, this is what I want to say in Kannada. How do you say it? And they'd tell me, and I'd write it down in English and learn it by heart and say it in front of the camera. But suddenly, in about 6 weeks' time, I realized that I could speak Kannada and do a show without anybody helping me out. So that Kannada came to me naturally. But then I have this thing that if I hang around any community for about a month or so, I'll start speaking their language. So it's part of my nature.
So Arvind, when you finally look back at your career, and 70 plus, you're talking something like 50 years of a career, maybe even 45 years of professional career. There must be moments when you start thinking, maybe I should retire, maybe I should put my feet up and relax. But I don't see that. I see this entire setup that you have in Gunrock now, that you set up, and I'm sure that you're again rolling off with wherever you started with. As a photographer, what's the pinnacle of it? I mean, you have worked with National Geographic, so for some people that might be the kind of the top that you could go and no further. But do you look out and say, I need to do something different? I need to be known by this when I'm gone. Is that kind of a thought that you have in your mind?
You actually voiced my words. There was a time when I was sitting down and talking with other people and discussing this over there. And then I said, listen, amongst Hindus, they have the ceremony where they perform when the father's gone away. They sit down and do a ceremony. And at the ceremony, the priest will ask you your father's name, your grandfather's name, and your great-grandfather's name. You're very fortunate if you remember your great-grandfather's name. So I don't want to be there. I want my grandchildren or great-grandchildren to look at a picture which has been shot by me someday and say, this man was my great-grandfather or grandfather or something like that. That's all that I intend to leave behind. I intend to leave behind a small body of work which will be remembered for at least 100 years, if not more than that.
So when you finally talk, the last piece would be to leave an advice for today's youngsters who are starting out. They think just by buying a fancy camera, an expensive camera, especially those who are born with silver spoon in the mouth, they think that's they have achieved it in life. But photography is something else, isn't it? Shooting for a passion is different. Shooting professionally is different.
Correct.
But what is your advice that you would give to today's youngsters who want to look at photography as a profession?
So let's look at it this way. If you're a professional photographer, as compared to an amateur photographer, an amateur photographer, if he shoots one picture out of 100 as an extraordinary picture, where he gets 100 out of 100 for that picture, he's considered excellent. If you're a professional, if you shoot one picture badly, you're not considered excellent anymore. 100% of your pictures have to deliver at least 95% of the quality out there. That's the differentiating factor. So you have to work to get your pictures to work. Whereas an amateur, you don't have anybody telling you, okay, this needs to be like that, that needs to be done like that. So nothing works that way. Here you have a job, your picture has job, you do it that way. And it is not so simple, it's not so easy. The nuances are, you got to read between the lines of photography and not just, sharpness. People consider a sharp picture to be a good picture. Not anymore. A good picture is something which you should be able to tell, number one, and not depend upon social media complimenting you on your pictures. I got 500 likes on my picture, therefore it's a great picture. Doesn't work. What works is that you like the picture and you are an honest person and you're being honest to yourself. That's a good picture. That's about it. So if you're honest to your profession, if you're honest to yourself, your work will do well. You don't need to be waiting for. In fact, if you wait for other people to applaud it, it's a surefire recipe for disaster. You will not be a great photographer after that.
Thank you, Arvind. As usual, wonderful speaking to you. We both vibe because we both are of the same age. Maybe I don't carry that many gray hairs. I haven't grown that bald, but I too have lost hair. At the same time, we both come from the field of media. I was on one side, you were on the other side. But it's wonderful listening to you because I remember the passion with which you shoot. It's not the number of photographs that you take in a day, but those limited number of pictures for you which you do so much of a setup and kind of get everything right, get the angle right before you decide to shoot. And that is a lesson for today's youngsters because today's youngsters is just a mobile phone, aim and shoot, and they think that is photography, or buy an expensive camera and shoot and that is photography. But it's not, and I'm thankful to you that you give us this entire journey of yours, the kaleidoscope of the journey that you went through. Wonderful listening to you, Arvind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suresh. Thanks.
That was Arvind Chenji, one of India's best known photographers, based right out of here in Hyderabad, talking about his journey from his student days to where he is now. A lesson for many a youngster who wants to make a passion and a profession out of photography. Thank you for watching.